Hey everybody, we are so glad that you are tuning in for our post show today. We got some amazing people that are joining us. My name is Josh, I'm the youth pastor here. Missed you guys last week, but I'm glad I am back this week.
Welcome back, Josh. Good to have you.
Yes, welcome back to you, Dave.
Thank
you weren't here
you.
either.
We were both gone last week.
Yeah, I know. Dave and I decided that every time one of us is out, the other one's going to be out too. We because it bothers Steve and Perry. So
It's a rule.
We already talked like, hey, when are you going out of town this time? All right, I'll be out of town too.
Exactly
we just
right.
won't be
Yep.
here together.
Please don't do that, because when we were wrapping up the post show, I was like, wait, what does Josh say? Is he going to rely on you? And I was like, have a good day. Bye, everyone.
We are all joined by Elizabeth and Layla today to break
Wait,
down.
I thought they were Andy.
Yeah, we're
Oh, that's
Andy.
true. You were Andy. Where's
Yeah,
the beard?
I still am. Very much am.
Yep.
I don't
That softball
understand how
Andy,
you
just no
guys
beard.
have beards.
Well, we don't inhale our beards
my gosh,
like you guys do.
I was
This
having
is-
like hairball moments.
No, this is really
Yeah,
gross.
like we trim ours so it doesn't go in our mouth and stuff like that. So.
This is really gross, but when I was singing in second service, I was like, there is so much hair in my mouth right
Yeah, there was hair
now. I
everywhere.
can't do this.
Yeah, we should have trimmed our beards before the pre-show.
Wow.
Now
But
we
they're
know.
warm. I did like the
Very warm.
layer of...
They are warm,
Warmth.
except for whenever it gets really cold outside, then your beard gets ice in it.
Beard sickles?
Yep, like last year during Christmas Eve, when we didn't have church service because there was so much snow.
Mm-hmm.
I went outside with Perry to go shovel somebody's driveway, and when we both walked back inside, we looked
No
like Jack
way.
Frost. We had little icicles on our beard. Yep,
Awesome.
because it was so.
That's
It was like
crazy.
-15.
Maybe if you put a
Way too
fake
cold.
beard on top of your real
Yeah, then the fake one will
beard.
get frozen.
It's
the
true,
real
but then
one
I'm
will
going
go
to
fine.
inhale.
And you'll be able to
Come
cough up a fur ball.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you know, best of both worlds.
Yep.
Definitely don't want to cough up a fur ball. All right, let's dive into our first question today. Oh, these are not updated. Hold on just a second. Well, the first question is, do you have any thoughts, questions, takeaways from
I
today's
love
message?
the pause. First question, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, takeaways, or anything about Dave's message this morning? Dave, you can have thoughts and takeaways from it too.
I do, and that is there's not enough time.
Well,
That's my
true.
primary
There we go.
thought.
Now it's updated. Bingo.
Yeah, today's message was a lot, and it was actually making me, I always reflect during your messages, and just thinking about even starting in middle school, learning about, evolution and whatnot. And at the time, it's kind of a funny story, but my parents signed me out they didn't want me to learn about it. And in a public school, I was extremely embarrassed about it because I had to go sit in the library, and I didn't have to do the tests or anything. And I just obviously wasn't deep in my faith at that time and to really be able to explain why. But looking back on it, I mean, I'm grateful for it. I mean, it I think really helped instill a strong belief at such a young age, but, obviously didn't fully comprehend it then, but, obviously can comprehend it at a little bit more of a stronger level now of, that was my parents' way of saying, like, this is what we believe, right? And there's no point in you learning about this. I mean, obviously I picked it up over the years or whatnot, but it's been something that I've been thinking about too, as my oldest daughter is in, it was right around 7th grade when they did that. And I didn't, think about it soon enough to consider if I should remove her from that. But I've just been trying to follow along with what she's learning about so that
That's
she
a great
feels
way to do it.
comfortable
Yeah.
to talk through it.
Absolutely. With my sophomore biology class in high school.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed biology. But we had a unit on evolution. And I think our teacher was required to teach it, but he himself didn't believe it. Because what he did is he said, okay, in the beginning of that unit, he goes, let's just take a survey. How many believe in creation? How many believe in evolution? And it was like, how many believe in evolution? And every hand went up in our class except two. Mine and another girl who went to the same church I did. And there was how many believe in creation? We raised our hands.
Yeah.
She did it because she believed it. I probably did it because I thought she was cute and thought maybe I could date her.
Oh my God.
That's
So,
amazing.
Dave's got
but
ulterior
then-
motives.
But then they let us all have turns explaining why we believe what we believe, and then to give like not only a defense, but to ask questions about the other side. And when the unit was done, they asked the same question, and only 2 kids said they still believed in evolution. Everybody else believed in creation. And it was like, whoa, what a great moment.
Yeah.
I remember whenever I was in middle school and they were teaching it to us, I remember sitting there like, so you mean to tell me that there was this explosion
Yeah.
and then this explosion brought life? Like, every time I've seen something explode, it destroys
It
stuff.
destroys
It doesn't
stuff.
make sense how it makes something when there was an explosion. And then when we were in high school, when our teacher was teaching it, she was like, the state requires me that I have to talk about this, so we're going to talk about this. And she went to my church, and I knew she didn't believe it. She was like, yeah, so the state says this about all this.
Yeah.
She was very much like, I do not believe this, but she obviously couldn't say that. She just said, the state tells me I have to tell you this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And it's important to understand evolution is a theory. It gets presented like a fact. However, you cannot prove evolution. Nothing is proved evolution. And so it's not like a proven thing. It is a theory about how life developed and changed. But it's important to understand it's not a fact, even though it's often presented like one.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things that stood out to me was a few months ago in youth group, we did a message on why I can trust the Bible.
Yeah.
And I was researching, especially the scientific element, which is what we obviously tackled in today's message. And through my research, whenever people start medical school, for the biggest example, they tell them at the beginning, hey, be prepared for what you learn now to be completely different in 4 years because of how fast science is discovering things and how it is matching what the Bible is saying. And whenever you were talking about those things, I was like, it is so crazy how he's up there and he's like, yeah, like science, like thousands of years later or hundreds of years later has proved what the Bible has said. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I wonder what it's going to prove next. Because like we sit here, we're like, what in the Bible is science going to prove? Like we don't know, but we know at some point there's going to be something in the Bible. It's like, oh, look at that. Like that lines up because of what science has proven. So that was one of the things that definitely stood out to me is just how fast science is changing, but how it is growing closer and closer to proving something in the Bible is true.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
yeah. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Questions?
Mine was just I never had a teacher in middle school or high school that was like, oh, like, this is what the state believes. Like, I never had a teacher that, like, thought that way or taught that way. And I knew what I believed and everything, but it was a weird, like, thought process of, like, sitting through that and knowing what I believed, but then also being like, but why isn't she saying that? And so, like, I never really had, like, so today was, like, crazy for me because I was like, oh, like, this is all what I should have been taught, but I wasn't. And so it's, like, taking what I had learned for years.
Yeah.
And being like, no, Elizabeth, that's not right.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of information for my brain, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was a
Today
lot.
was kind of information heavy. That is
Yeah.
very true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the examples you gave, that's kind of, I mean, like, there are so many great, I love your analogies, but especially with today's topic because it's so deep and the words are like, what does this word even mean, right? And I know
for
you kept
sure.
saying that, but
Yeah.
it was nice to be able to have the different examples, like when in ending, like when you were talking about the polymers and the Rubik's Cube and like those statistics, because it just, I think, helps emphasize and break it down to something that we can comprehend of like the unlikelihood of these theories being true. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I think it kind of brews up a question for me, and I'm curious if either one of you have gotten questions from parents, like, what would you, sorry, Josh, slowly stealing your thunder on the questions.
No,
Like,
this
what-
is exactly what this is for. I love that there's other questions being asked.
What would you, or how would you guide parents, because just thinking through again, I think I kind of missed that window with my oldest, and after today's message, I want to circle back with her and where she's at. And maybe I haven't yet, like maybe they haven't talked through evolution yet, but like what are tips and tricks that you can give parents or guidance, overall guidance on, as our kids go through, I think it's right around 7th grade when they teach this, where you can, be mindful of not allowing them that space to make their own decision on what they believe or not. But like, I guess my question would be just like, what would be the guidance there for parents with
That's a good
upcoming
question.
kids?
That's a great question. Well, the very first thing I would say is don't be afraid of their questions.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, and there were times where my mom was like this too, where I would ask her a question and she would just freeze and not know what to say. And I tell all the youth leaders, I'm like, if a youth student asks you a question, you don't know the answer, it is perfectly able to say, okay,
Yeah.
say, I don't know. Let me get back to you. I do that a lot, actually. So they'll ask me some of the craziest things. And I'm like, like one person asked me, why do they worship a golden calf? Why do the Israelites worship a golden calf? I don't know, but I'll go and try to find out.
Yeah.
So if they were to ask you anything and you don't know, the better option is to not freeze and to shut down the conversation. We go, hey, let's research this together.
Yeah.
Let's read the creation story together. Let's just doing it together is let's figure this out as a group will make them not feel as standoffish for having questions or doubting
Yeah.
or having these concerns. So that's where
like
I would
that.
start.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would make it, sorry. I feel like that would make it a lot less like, oh, well, like, why am I questioning this? Because if you act like,
Good point.
Yep.
Yeah.
if you freeze or if you act like you know the answer without being like, hey, this is why,
Yeah.
or like, let's look into this together, then I feel like it could come off as like a, oh, well, why are you questioning that? Type of a
You're
thing.
coming alongside
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
your kid
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
walk through this.
I think it's important to convey the fact that, look, we're all in pursuit of what is true.
Yeah.
And we're going to learn and change and adapt. I'm on this journey just like you are as a child. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this together. If something is true and knowable, then let's pursue it and find out what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's like important that we don't convey that we feel threatened by the question because our belief is so tenuous.
Yeah.
We don't really know why. So when we get asked why, we just push back hard, which is really a way of going, don't ask that question. Well, that doesn't serve anyone well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hey, I don't know. Let's find out. I think it's important that parents do some research. It's not hard to find. Do some research, read some books to get enough information and you go, let's go ahead and talk about this.
Yep.
It's really important.
Yep. For sure. That's a great question. Is there anything else? Any other thoughts or questions or takeaways? I like the whole illustration from Stephen Hawking and how you broke that down. That one was funny.
Look, the guy was a genius.
Yeah.
His intellect was like, oh my goodness, so mind-boggling. But to watch someone of that intellectual capacity wrestle with these fundamental questions and try to come up with a reason excluding God, I think demonstrate the futility of that. When God is actually the more reasonable explanation. One of the reasons I chose some of the stories and analogies that I did is I wanted to demonstrate that it is really true. Science involves a lot of faith.
Yeah.
And some of the conclusions they infer, you got to have a lot of faith to believe that kind of stuff. And the notion that we're all about reason and facts and you Christians are about blind faith is like, couldn't be farther from the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on. Really good. I found this to be a great question whenever I was flipping through the book and it popped into my head. Are there any specific scientific discoveries or findings that have strengthened your faith or deepened your understanding of Christianity? I know that's kind of pulling one off the brain, so I'll go first. Whenever I was doing a lot of the research for that message that I did back in March in youth group, I was researching like archaeological discoveries, and the fact that at that time, again, this was in March, there were around 25,000 archaeological discoveries that supported the validity of Scripture and what the Bible said and the scientific claims and all that kind of stuff, and there were zero that went against it. There was not a single archaeological discovery that we have found that has gone against the Bible. And on top of that, if you go and look at articles that were written in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s of 20 reasons why the Bible isn't true scientifically, and then you pull that list out today, most of those lists have been completely proven as not true because of how science has progressed. So that has definitely helped deepen my faith and going like, man, like there's even more evidence today than there was
Yeah.
15 years ago that supports what a
More
belief.
evidence.
Yeah.
Science and Christianity, they're allies.
Yep.
Yeah.
They actually work
Yeah.
together, not against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Dave? I know that you probably did a lot of research. Well, I mean, obviously you did a lot of research, but in this realm,
10 or 15
is there
minutes
anything
worth,
that you found either now in this or throughout your entire walk that was just like,
Actually, what I would say is this. It is in deepening my understanding of the Big Bang. Because that was becoming vogue when I was in high school in biology class. And it was always pitted against the Big Bang versus creation. When it's like, wait a minute, the creation account explains the Big Bang. And more than anything, what I'm becoming fascinated by is that, and I believe I mentioned it this morning, Scripture says God spoke things into being. It was a verbal communication. Let there be light, right? It was, I spoke and it was. And speaking, it's information, it's communication. And how through all of the scientific discoveries of the last 30 years, every single thing in its heart is comprised of information. A word. There's a word of information in every particle in the universe. How did that information get there?
yeah,
A story that I didn't use this morning. There were a lot, Elizabeth, that I didn't use this morning that I really wanted to.
yep. Hold on, before
need
you
to
say that
pause.
story,
Yeah.
we're gonna say bye to
I need
Elizabeth because she's
pause
got to go
for,
sing a
like,
song.
Half a second.
Yes.
I loved this message. I appreciate you and your brain. You're very smart, but I need to stick out here.
Hey, I really liked it, but I'm done talking with you, so goodbye.
Well, I will say one more thing. I remember that message about like you being like, "Hey, these are all the facts." Blah blah blah. And that was it. This is something that I don't research enough. It's something that I just don't. I don't know. It's because I am just so confused by it because like of what I was taught in school and being like,
Yeah.
no, that's not right.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, and I remember how like that for me was like the eye-opening thing. And so like
That's
I
awesome.
Okay.
thank you for that.
Bye.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. I'm out of here.
All right,
fun.
thanks, Elizabeth.
See ya.
Elizabeth.
She's going to go help lead us in worship.
Yep. She's late.
And she's late. There's
I
the
bet
first song.
Steve's standing up there like, oh, Josh and Dave and Layla kept her too long. She's coming, Steve.
No keyboard on the first song.
No keyword on the first
No.
song.
Oh, my.
Okay, your story.
Yes, the story.
Yeah, it's like in the auditorium over the emergency exit door, there's a 4-letter word called exit.
Yep.
Everybody looks at that and goes, that someone with intelligence designed that. It has a word consisting of 4 letters, and everybody knows what that word means and gets direction from that one word on what to do in a certain situation. Human DNA, if you broke it down into how many letters in the information, has 6 billion letters of information that are precisely laid out that not only designs our bodies, but keeps our bodies functioning and replicating on the cellular level. How could we possibly not think that if some intelligent designer put the exit sign up with 4 letters, that DNA with 6 billion wasn't also put there by an intelligent designer?
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that are like, it's so rational to believe that God created all that is.
Absolutely. That's a good one. Maybe you should use that in third service.
Maybe I should. Second was different than first, and I just have third be different than all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And you could go
Challenge
and you could go a
accepted.
little bit longer because there's no service after it.
Yeah.
Don't tell Steve I said that though. You have anything, Layla, that you can think of? I know it's kind of an on the spot type question.
No, there isn't any like specific example. I think, I mean, like I said, from my young upbringing, I don't really, this probably sounds really bad, but I don't pay attention very much to the scientific discoveries because to me it's just very black and white. Like
Yeah.
God created us. Like there is no other option. And I think that's partly why I'm just not naturally curious. It's probably not the greatest answer, but that's just my firm belief, you know.
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with
so-
that. So.
And here's what's fascinating. That belief, Layla, is not blind. I know I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, so you need to stop me if they're not your words. But you have come to the place where you believe that the Bible is credible, that it's trustworthy. And because of your belief that the Bible is a credible, trustworthy record of history and communication from God, you accept creation because it comes from a book you've deemed credible. It's not just, well, I just want to believe it, don't tell me anything differently. It's like, no, it comes from a book that I've judged to be credible for a number of reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a much better explanation.
That was a great explanation.
What
Dave is
said.
now a mind reader.
Josh, stop that.
Please don't email us. And if you do, dave@my3c.org. All right, let's, Dave, I know that you're about to have to go, so let's wrap up with this question right here. Did it work? There we go. What are some practical ways we can encourage a healthy dialogue between science and faith within our church?
Good one.
What are some healthy ways?
I think just being willing to have the conversation.
Yeah.
It's okay. It is common for Christians to believe in at least some form of evolution. Usually it's called theistic evolution. There's all these sorts of things. There are debates about how old is the world really? Those kinds of questions should be like, those are great questions. Let's think about them. Let's research them. Let's talk about them so that we can come to maybe a more reasoned conclusion. I just think not shutting down questions rooted in science is critical for having actual dialogue.
Yeah.
That would be the first thing that comes to my mind.
Absolutely. I think another thing is we need to, as Christians, we need to not be afraid of the word science. I mean, I know for me, like whenever I hear the word science, like the first thing that pops into my mind is like all the medical stuff and vaccines and
Good stuff,
and
yep.
so many things
Yep.
that a lot of Christians can take as this big contradictory thing to what we believe in. It's just like I have to myself do this reworking of, okay, science isn't 100% bad.
Yeah.
Like there are discoveries that help in so many areas. Is all of it beneficial? Sometimes no, but that doesn't mean that none of it's not
No,
beneficial.
in fact, the vast majority is beneficial. The vast majority is
Absolutely.
good. It's a few things that happen to be critical where the problem lies.
Yeah, and also we do live in a world where I don't know the exact number. I do remember hearing about it whenever I was taking a biology class in college, but how people trust scientists even less than before. I mean, people are trusting people in the world less
Yeah.
than ever
Yeah.
before now. So
Yeah.
the rates of trusting are even lower, but especially with science, like scientists, they're even lower now because of one of the things you shared of how if somebody believes in God or if they don't believe in God, how different the same findings can be just because of the lens that they're looking through with it.
Yes, and if we would just be honest about the lens and why we infer what, because we agree on the facts.
Yeah.
So that just helps dialogue as well. Because just like Christians can be smug and judgmental in their conclusions, and that's wrong, when science is smug and judgmental in their conclusions, it's also not wrong. It makes it so that we can't talk about these issues in a healthy way like we ought to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Was there anything else?
I would just add to your original answer about like being open to talk made me think about what you were stating earlier about how science is going to continue to change. So I think that in that open environment and the willingness to have dialogues within the church should be something that's not a one and done, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an open door at all
Yeah.
times.
Absolutely,
And I
Leia.
think that it's our responsibility to embrace that, and promote that type of environment. So
Yep.
that's
Absolutely.
just something
Good
else that I
stuff.
would add to that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your wisdom, both of you, and Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing and for your wisdom. I know that you're not here; you're on stage now. I could imagine, Dave, that you and I are going to get a lot of fun questions
I hope
this
so.
week. This one could be like a lot of fun. Or we might just talk about a big hodgepodge of questions, which there's nothing wrong with that either. If you have any questions throughout this entire series that we've done, even from a message that we did a month and a half ago, like our sexuality message or our identity message or anything like that, you can submit those questions on my3c.org. Whenever you click on there, they'll have a top banner. You can hit submit a question, put it in there. It's totally anonymous. We tackle all of those questions Wednesday at 7 p.m. We get to hear from this man right here that has more knowledge than any person I've ever met. You just carry around
You have
so much
not
in your
met
brain.
many people, have you, Josh?
I feel like I've met a lot of people, but you just carry so much knowledge that I'm like, how does he even fit that in there?
Well, most of it falls out after the week, and I start all kind of fresh. But I am blessed in that I have a church family that loves me enough that they free me financially to devote the bulk of my time to study and research so that I can help them process information. So what I do, probably anybody else can do if they just had the time to do it. And my church family affords me that time, and I'm deeply grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Benefits
And we appreciate everything that you do for us in tackling those questions. So you can watch this Q&A live on Facebook or YouTube on 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights. But also, the beautiful thing about technology is you can go back and rewatch it. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify Podcasts, which I think is just the same thing on Spotify. I don't know. I don't use Spotify. But then you can also rewatch it on Facebook and on YouTube. So you'll be able to watch it throughout the entire week. And then all of the past Q&As, all of the past post shows, they're on there too.
all there.
We highly recommend you go listen to those if you haven't yet, and the past messages are there too if you want to hear everything from this series. But we're going to let Dave go. He's got to go preach his message one more time. I'm going to go sit into this one because it sounds like it might be a little bit different.
It could be. Who knows?
So I'm going to go sit in this one and get to enjoy the message one more time. But everybody, again, if you have a question, submit it at my3c.org. Submit a question right at the top, and we'll be tackling that this upcoming Wednesday at 7 p.m. We hope to see you Wednesday night. Actually, we do hope to see you tonight at Trunk or Treat if you're able to come, because we're going to be able to love on our community, which is going to be great. But if we don't see you either on tonight or Wednesday night for a Q&A, we'll see you next Sunday. Bye, guys.